Well, we were wondering what new idea Howie Roseman would have to build the 2025 Philadelphia Eagles. I think he found one that he was following this offseason. We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Wednesday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase. Today's podcast is sponsored by Gametime. Right now, Gametime, if you download the app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. So Howie Roseman, every single year, it does feel like he finds different ways to build the Eagles roster. And sometimes, he does have certain core principles that he always follows, but every single year, he tries to be creative. He tries to be innovative. He tries to do things differently than the rest of the teams in the league. And you guys have heard me talk about this to death on this podcast because it's something that I see is so valuable in what has made the Eagles two-time Super Bowl champions in under a decade, and they've been to 3 Super Bowls. I think this is a main reason for that sustained success, even in so much inconsistency of the roster, at least year to year. Howie Roseman is that one consistent part of this golden era of Eagles football, and his ability to change things up every single year and try new things and learn from his mistakes is what makes him one of the greatest general managers in the history of the NFL. And so last year it was, of course, signing Saquon Barkley, right? It was building the Georgia defense, like bringing in an entire historic college defense and just carrying it over into the NFL. He started the trade era. Then he started collecting draft picks when the rest of the league was trading them away and was being aggressive. The Rams F them picks era, the Eagles started to collect ammunition. So every year he does this where he's trying to find new ways to be innovative and create this roster differently to win championships, to compete year after year. We did an entire episode a few weeks ago before free agency started on this exact topic. And I was wondering, what's going to be that new idea this year? What's going to be his zig when the rest of the league zags? Well, I do think that Howie Roseman has found his new market to tap into, and he has really dove headfirst into this idea in the 2025 offseason. And you guys at this point know what it is. It's the idea of, in an offseason where he's committed to saving cash, to not overspend on B players like Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Mekhi Becton, to not do what he did the last Super Bowl win where he pays with his heart, he doesn't make decisions with his head, and loyalty really gets in the way of long-term success. He's very disciplined this offseason, determined to not go through that again, to learn from that past. But at the same time, he wants to do that while also finding potential that can still hit. Like, he still wants to go for upside in the free agent pool. He wants to, of course, be disciplined, and he knows he has one of the highest payrolls in the history of the NFL at one position on offense. And then at the same time, he knows the defense, there's stars coming up as well that have to get paid. But he's not just saying, I'm going to punt on the offseason, I'm not going to bring anybody in. The way to do both, to be cheap, like to thrift shop in free agency, but at the same time, still try to add difference makers in a Super Bowl run of 2025 is by doing what he's doing this year. It's by going into the market of former top picks, first, second round players with legitimate physical tools that made them an early day 1 or day 2 selection, that their market is not good. I don't want to say it's dead, but it's at its lowest it's been since they were in the NFL. Try to find those players that want to build up their value to bank on themselves, like Josh Sweat did this past year, like Mekhi Becton did, like Zach Bond did, guys that envision themselves cashing in 2026. So the idea this year is to almost, Howie Roseman's taking advantage of how good his team is. He's taking advantage of the reputation the Eagles have across the league. He's taking advantage almost of losing these players like Becton, like even Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to a degree. A down year in Detroit, comes back to Philadelphia, has one of the best years of his career. He's using Saquon Barkley and Zach Bond and how he's built this team to his advantage to lure in these kinds of free agents that he is specifically targeting. It's an Azeez Ojulari that was a first-round pick that hasn't been able to stay healthy in his career. Or I should say a former second-round selection. And so he wants to sign a one-year prove-it deal and potentially cash in 2026, considering he's only 26 years old. You could say the same thing about a 26-year-old former second-rounder himself in Joshua Uche. Adoree Jackson was a former early draft pick. He's an older player, but another guy that fits that mold of a guy that has the talent, has the tools, and they're getting him for cheap because their market just wasn't there this year. So they don't have to commit these long-term, big-time dollars like they're going to have to for their actual core. But at the same time, it's not the 2018 signing of a Mike Wallace or, bringing in, those kinds of CB veteran players that are looking for rings, like a Malik Jackson or a Haloti Nada, those kinds of players that there really is no upside to. And you just hope that they stay healthy. Like that can work. Veterans that are ring chasing, that happened in 2017 and it helped them win a title. But I like this approach better that Howie Roseman is doing compared to going old and inexpensive in 2018, in 2019, like going for those veteran proven players. I like the idea. This is a little bit riskier, but to target a former first or second round pick that's like 26 years old, a Kenyon Green, a former top 15 draft pick, 15th overall pick, that, yeah, he's been terrible in the NFL, but we're going to bank on him coming in with Jeff Stoutland and having somewhat success like Mekhi Becton has and pretty much everybody that's come into this organization to play for Jeff Stoutland. I like this approach better. And then you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, because if you can't retain these players in the following offseason, if they do play as well as all these other additions that you made the last few years, then they leave in free agency and you get compensatory picks. The Eagles, in large thanks to comp picks, are going to have over 20 draft picks to use in the next two draft classes. So I really like this idea. I like this. I don't want to say it's a market inefficiency. He's tapping into a brand new thing that the NFL hasn't even thought of. But it's just yet another example of Howie Roseman trying to get involved in a market where there's not many players. There weren't a lot of guys, and there's a reason these players don't have a huge market, because they haven't really been good or they've been injured. There's a lot of reasons. They haven't fit in certain systems, maybe off the field things. Like, Howie Roseman's not a genius for targeting Joshua Uche, but I just like the idea of, yet again, him looking for talent in places that other teams don't really want it. And this is a cool way to do it when you know your hands are kind of tied behind your back from a financial standpoint. When you know this is a maintenance offseason for the salary cap, this is the best way to do that, to be cheap, but to also still seek out upside, to not settle like you did in 2018 and 2019. As much as I love Deshaun Jackson, going back for D-Jacks, like those types of moves, trading for a Golden Tate, trading for Kevin Byard, just the Band-Aid patchwork. Like, I like that they're doing this instead. And yes, they're 1 year short-term deals, so you could also say these are Band-Aid signings. But these guys are all like 20, 25, 26, 27 years old. If you get another Zach Bond, who's to say they won't pay Azeez Ojulari? Who's to say they won't pay Kenyon Green to be the future right guard? So this is, to me, a really good idea. Howie Roseman has done it in the past, but he has really, really embraced this approach the last two off seasons. I actually heard this from an Eagles beat reporter on X. The Eagles have signed 14 different former first or second round players in the last two off seasons. I like that a lot. I think this is a good approach. And again, it's a buy low, like low risk, high reward type of move. If Uche doesn't pan out, whatever. You don't have a lot of guaranteed money hooked on these guys. Azeez Ojulari, the same thing. And the good thing is, too, you have other options. You're not putting all your eggs in the basket of these players like you kind of did. Deshaun Jackson, you were relying on him heavily in 2019. You were relying on a lot of those veterans heavily in those past years to be full-time starters. And now these guys are rotational pieces. Maybe they can be that top guy, but you have a Jalix Hunt if Ojulari and Uche don't pan out. You have Tyler Steen if Kenyon Green doesn't pan out. So I like this approach. There's really no way to lose here. It's not like it's the Bryce Huff signing where you're committing $16 million a year. And it's just the next way that Howie Roseman is trying to stand out in a different kind of offseason where he doesn't have as much flexibility to be aggressive with trading draft picks and spending a lot of money. He's already done that a lot, and this was definitely a maintenance offseason for sure. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, Brandon Graham's retirement and the Super Bowl win in general, Lane Johnson's extension. It got me thinking a lot about legacy. I saw some people discussing this on Eagles Twitter the other day after BG's press conference. Talk about the Eagles' Mount Rushmore. Like who, now that BG has called it a career, Lane Johnson continues to build on his legacy. Jason Kelce has retired. Same with Fletcher Cox. Has the Eagles' Mount Rushmore changed at all for you? It has for me. I'll unveil my new updated Eagles Mount Rushmore of the best 4 Eagles of all time. Coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. I'll never forget the 2022 NFC Championship game in Philadelphia against San Francisco. I don't know if I'll ever match that kind of live game atmosphere again in my entire life. Getting tickets to these games should not be stressful. That's where Gametime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute game seats at unbeatable prices. Gametime picks curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Their lowest price guarantee, Gametime also has this where they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find a better price on another platform. Plus, you're going to make sure you get peace of mind with your seats. See the view of your seat before you buy, so you know you're getting a great view on top of the great price. Download the Gametime app, take the guesswork out of buying tickets, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Locked On, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. So Brandon Graham retiring after 15 legendary years with the Philadelphia Eagles. 3rd all-time in sacks. No Eagle has ever played more games in that jersey than BG. 206 total games played. An absolute legend. And was his ceiling ever what it was for Trent Cole or, Reggie White? Did he ever have an 18 sack season or 14 like even Connor Barwin or, Jason Babin? Was he the elite player of Hassan Reddick in 2022 ever? I think there were some years he was elite. Did he ever have those kind of peak seasons? No. But he only had 1 double-digit sack season in his career. But when it comes down to not just those accomplishments on the field, but the leadership, the wins, like the longevity, the games played, the culture, on top of the efficiency. Like, yes, he was never a double-digit sack guy, but he did it once in 2022, but constantly was a 7 to 9 sack guy a year. Like, you could always rely on BG getting at least like 7 to 8 sacks a year. And he was constantly at the top of the league in pass rush win rate and total quarterback pressures, QB hits. When you combined all of that and what he meant to this organization in this city, I think Brandon Graham does belong on the Eagles Mount Rushmore. Like he might not have the greatest career of all time in Eagles history. Like he might not be the best player in Eagles history. He might not even be the best player at his position in franchise history. But when it comes to the accomplishments of his career, what he meant to this team, what it means to be an Eagle, he might be the greatest Eagle of all time. Like the best, he is the most Philadelphia Eagle there has ever been. And that has a lot to do with that. That plays a huge part when it comes to discussing a legacy of a player with a team. And so that's what a Mount Rushmore is. It's not just who were the 4 best players. I think it's the 4 players that meant the most to this team, the 4 most Philadelphia Eagles of all time. And of course, the on-field accomplishments do have to play a part as well. But Brandon Graham, to me, I think he has to be on that Mount Rushmore. And after that Super Bowl win a month ago, I started to think about, has the Mount Rushmore changed for me? Because I had some players on there that now I've actually taken off. So here's my new Eagles all-time Mount Rushmore. Yes, Brandon Graham is on it. I also have Brian Dawkins, who to me should always be on the list. Like he is, just like BG, one of those Philadelphia Eagles of all time. Like everybody you ask growing up in the 2000s, their favorite player was Brian Dawkins. When you're like describing what it means to be an Eagle, what kind of player our fans would build in a lab. It's Brian Dawkins. And he was the core leader, one of your top 3 players during the golden era of Eagles football at the time, the most sustained success this team has ever had in franchise history. 5 NFC championship games going up till 2008, a Super Bowl appearance, playoff win after playoff win, division title after division title. Every time they got back to the NFC championship game, Brian Dawkins was the face of that team. And again, the leadership, the speeches, the entrance. I mean, that's Brian Dawkins, the hard-hitting, physical, blue-collar nature. He's a Philadelphia Eagle through and through, Weapon X. Like, you have to, even though he didn't get a ring like some of these other legends, he has to be up there. So he was the one guy that I didn't change on this list. So I put Brian Dawkins there with Brandon Graham. But my other 2 are brand new. So I took Jason Kelce off the Mount Rushmore, and I put Lane Johnson on there. Lane Johnson, and I said this yesterday, he could go down as, when it comes to talking about Brandon Graham, yeah, he didn't have all the accolades, the All-Pro seasons, the Pro Bowls, the double-digit sack seasons. Lane Johnson does. He has the All-Pros. He has the first-team All-Pro seasons. He has the Pro Bowls. He has one of the most dominant runs of an individual player ever in the 2020s, where he went years without allowing a sack. He has won 2 Super Bowls in Philadelphia. He's been to 3. Only him and Brandon Graham, outside of, I guess, people kept saying to mention Jake Elliott, but an offensive or defensive core piece, it's only BG and Lane Johnson that won both of those rings in Philadelphia. He's still signed another 3-year extension, so he has 3 more years to compete for championships and continue to be elite. He's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Lane Johnson's been a part of so many different eras, the Chip Kelly era, the Doug Peterson era, the Nick Sirianni era. How many right guards has he played next to, and they've never skipped a beat? He's constantly put on an island every single game, never gets any help. Like Lane Johnson, I mean, he's a leader of this football team. How do you not put him on the Mount Rushmore? I think he is one of the most dominant Eagles of all time. He might be the most talented, the best Eagle ever. Again, from an individual accomplishment standpoint, has anybody ever been more dominant at their position in Eagles history than Lane Johnson? If we're talking about it from that perspective, I would say no. And I'd have to put him on the Mount Rushmore over Jason Kelce. After this past season, I think I'm putting Lane Johnson ahead of number 62. And then I took Nick Foles down, and I put Jalen Hurts up there. Yeah, Nick Foles won you your first Super Bowl, but Jalen Hurts, to me, is now the Eagles' GOAT. He is the greatest quarterback in franchise history. He won you a Super Bowl. He's been to 2. No other Eagles quarterback has been to 2. He has 2 of the best Super Bowl performances in the history of the NFL. Every single year he's been the Eagles starter, they've made it to the playoffs. He's going to go down as one of the greatest rushing quarterbacks of all time. He's going to break Cam Newton's rushing touchdown record within the next year or 2. When you look at his, total wins, his win percentage, it's up there with the all-time greats like Tom Brady and Joe Montana and Peyton Manning when it comes to his total playoff wins and how many more championships he's still going to compete for. He's going to shatter every passing record the Eagles have. Like, as long as he doesn't suffer some Cam Newton-like injury, RG3 type of wear and tear, Michael Vick, unless that happens and his mobility falls off a cliff in his 30s, Jalen Hurts is going to be by far the most accomplished Eagles quarterback of all time. I think he already is. Donovan McNabb still has the longevity aspect, but Jalen's going to be that guy, and he's one of the greatest leaders in franchise history, too. And he's an underdog. He wasn't a first-round pick that was supposed to be the franchise quarterback. From that perspective, Philly can get behind it. How do you not put Jalen Hurts on this list now? Like, yeah, you might love Reggie White or Chuck Bednarik or, heck, Steve Van Buren if you want to go back to the 40s. But Jalen Hurts has outdueled in 2 Super Bowls for your team, a top 2 player of all time. Should have beat him both times and did beat him the second time around. Stopped a three-peat. He also stopped history. Like Eli Manning stopped the undefeated Patriots in 2007. Jalen Hurts stopped the only three-peat that has been this close ever. The Chiefs were 1 win away from immortality. And Jalen Hurts, who was dared to beat them with his arm by Steve Spagnuolo, destroyed them with his arm inside the pocket, destroyed them on third down with his legs. Like Jalen Hurts, he's building in my opinion, he's building a Hall of Fame career already. And he's one of 2 young quarterbacks in this era that have a ring. It's him and Pat Mahomes. So Nick Foles got you your first. Reggie White's a top 2, top 3 pass rusher of all time. Jason Kelce's one of your best leaders ever, maybe the best center in the history of the NFL. An Iron Man that also helped you win a championship. Has such a connection to the city and, of course, the speech at the parade in 2017. It's hard to keep a lot of these legends off, but there's only 4 spots on Mount Rushmore. And so I took down Nick Foles and Jason Kelce, and I took down Chuck Bednarik, and I threw up there Jalen Hurts. To go with Brian Dawkins, I put up Jalen Hurts, Lane Johnson, and Brandon Graham. So I think there's going to be people, depending on your age, that do not agree with this. You're going to say there's been games that the Eagles played. There were Eagles teams before the 2000s, before the 2010s, the 2020s, sure. But this is the best era of Eagles football we've ever gotten. In the 21st century, but the 2020s, all right, just the last 10 years. So the 2016, the second run of Howie Roseman, these last 8 years, 9 years, this has been the best we've ever seen of Eagles football in the city of Philadelphia. So, yeah, there's going to be more legends that get the benefit of the doubt from these teams than the past ones because these ones got the job done. And they're equal talents. Like, don't tell me Lane Johnson or Jalen Hurts or Brandon Graham weren't just as good as, Reggie White or Jerome Brown or, even Brian Dawkins at their time or Donovan McNabb, LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson. These guys are equally as talented, if not more. Again, I think Lane Johnson's the most dominant Eagle of all time. Has there ever been anybody this good at their position? It's been close. Jason Kelce was that good for a long time. Reggie White had the sack record for a long time. So maybe it's Reggie White's the second guy in this debate. It's him versus Lane Johnson. Heck, even A.J. Brown, you could make the conversation for. LaShawn McCoy, you could definitely make you make the argument for. But Lane, I don't know. I mean, you could make the argument he's the best right tackle in the history of the NFL and one of the best tackles of all time. The guy went years without giving up a sack, and he's still good, and he's in his mid-30s. He could play into his 40s like Jason Peters did and be just as good as he is now. So that's my Mount Rushmore. Jalen Hurts, Brian Dawkins, Brandon Graham, and Lane Johnson. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, the Eagles and multiple other teams proposed some new rules to the NFL today. I like most of them. There's one I have a problem with. We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, guys, we're wrapping up this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. So teams today took some time to propose new rules to the NFL that was released to the public early this morning. And for the most part, I like what was proposed. I like the rule that Philadelphia sent to the league. I like the rules from the Detroit Lions. But the Green Bay Packers officially have proposed the idea that the NFL bans the tush push, that a player cannot push, an offensive player cannot push forward the player that takes the snap from the center. So basically they are attacking the Eagles for the tush push. I give this proposal a thumbs down. It comes off as soft. To me, their basis was player safety. And when it comes to pacing of the game, as if this play slows the game down, it happened one time. And they're trying to take advantage of that. The Commanders' NFC Championship game, Frankie Louie diving over Cam Jurgens multiple times. Yes, that delayed the game, but that barely ever happens. Penalties on this play are rare. Teams aren't constantly trying to do what Frankie Louie did. If they want to get the play out of the league, then that's what they should do. But it's not like that's happened all the time, and this has been a constant problem that the Packers are making it seem like it is. And also, player safety. Look, where are the injuries? Where are the numbers the Packers... Are they backing this up with facts, with data? I don't remember ever seeing a player get injured. At least maybe there's been one or two, but show me the serious injury that has happened off a tush push. Show me an Eagles offensive lineman that's got hurt or a concussion that Jalen Hurts or a defensive player has suffered as a result of this play. The data has shown the last 2 years that it's not an overly dangerous play compared to any other play. And the fact that the rule isn't an offensive player just can't push anyone forward. It's not like they're not saying a right guard can't push a running back upfield if it's like 2nd and 8 and they got 6 yards, and here comes the center pushing the running back forward past the sticks. You're allowed to do that. No, they specifically targeted just you cannot push the player that grabs the ball after the snap. And to me, the Packers, like, this is weak, and I don't think the NFL is going to get rid of it. If it's off the Packers basis, there's no fact there. There's no, if the NFL thinks it's too automatic of a play, whatever, I disagree. The Eagles will still be able to use the quarterback sneak and I think just be as effective. The push really isn't what makes this play. It's the elite offensive line. It's Jalen Hurts being one of the most powerful quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. So if they get rid of it, I'm not too concerned if it's because of the automation. But if it's because of what the Packers said, because of the, player safety aspect of it, the game pacing, like as if it delays the game, give me a break. And it's not like the Eagles are using this play all the time. It's only really when it's on the 1 yard line in the red zone, or if it's 3rd and inches or 4th and inches. That's it. It's not like this is a huge part of every single game and it's ruining the product on the field. It's not. They're just butthurt. They lost the playoffs to this football team. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's ridiculous. Thumbs down to the Packers trying to ban the tush push. I love what the Eagles proposed, though. So the Eagles, I'll give this one a thumbs up. They proposed an overtime rule adjustment. So we all know in the playoffs, because of that legendary 2021-2022 divisional round matchup between Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes, Godzilla versus King Kong, blow for blow, just exchanging left hook, right hook, the divisional round. It came down to pretty much who had the ball last. Did not go to overtime because Pat Mahomes only needed 13 seconds to drive down the field and win the game. After the NFL saw that and saw Josh Allen not get another chance at redemption, that was actually to go into overtime. Mahomes drove down after to win the game. Allen did not get a chance to answer back. The NFL saw that and say, we can't have a game end like this again. An all-time historic classic NFL game cannot end this way, where Allen doesn't touch the ball in overtime after having one of the best playoff performances we've ever seen from a player. So they proposed in the playoffs, both teams will be guaranteed at least one possession of the football. We saw that come to fruition in Super Bowl 58 between the Niners and the Chiefs. The Niners kick a field goal, the Chiefs score a touchdown to win it. But for some reason, the NFL kept the old rule in the regular season where it's still first team, kick a field goal, okay, the other team gets the ball. But you're not guaranteed it. If a team that has the ball first in the regular season in overtime scores a touchdown, the game's over. But why? Like, you are acknowledging your overtime rule was faulty, yet you keep it in the regular season but not in the playoffs. Like, you're admitting this is not a good rule, and yet you only fixed it for like the playoffs. And I'd rather have it be that they fix it in the playoffs in the regular season, but you were saying that's not a good rule, so why are you keeping it for 17 games of the year, but then you're not going to keep it for the final 4 games? That one doesn't make sense to me. The Eagles are proposing that the overtime playoff rule is the same in the regular season, and I think that's a great idea. I'll give a thumbs up to the Eagles for that proposal. They finally did not propose the onside kick alternative. That's one they've been trying every single year, but that one, it sounds like, is probably dead in the water at this point with all the new rules. All right, so one other rule change that I liked from the Detroit Lions, a win-based playoff seeding. I'm going to give this one a thumbs up as well. So the Lions are proposing that a team with more wins, even if they don't win the division. So let's say, and I get why they're doing this, they're in the NFC North where 3 teams won double-digit games last year. So their argument is, even though they were the 1 seed, they're saying, okay, if the Green Bay Packers win 11 games, the Minnesota Vikings win, I think they won 13 games last year, but they don't win the division because Detroit wins 14. One of those teams, the Packers and the Vikings, even though they didn't win the division, if they have more wins than, let's say, the winner of the NFC South, the 9-10 win Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that wild card, normally a wild card team, will get home field advantage over the division winner. They'll be a higher seed based on wins. It's not based on your division. So a division winner is not guaranteed a top 4 seed. I really like that. I'll give this one a thumbs up by the Lions. I think the Eagles haven't really benefited much from a bad division outside of, I guess, 2019, you could say they did when they were 9-7. They were an inferior team to Seattle, and they got a home game. But outside of that, normally the Eagles, when they have home field advantage, they've earned it. But I think this is a good proposal because there's times divisions are really, really bad. And I don't think a 13-win team that doesn't win the division should have to go to the stadium of a 9-win division winner of a crappy football team. So I agree with that. It's like back in, 2010? 2009, 2010, New Orleans had to go to Seattle against a 7-9 Seahawks, and the Seahawks shocked the world and beat New Orleans in that game, the Beast Mode game, the Beast Quake. I like this proposal. I think a win-based... We actually changed this in our fantasy football league a few years ago, and I've liked the result. I think a win-based playoff seeding makes more sense than winning the division. Now, it kind of takes away the value a little bit of winning your division, but you'll still be guaranteed a playoff spot if you win the division, but you won't be guaranteed like a top seed. You won't be guaranteed home field advantage in any of these games. It's based more on wins. I like that a lot because you're almost being punished for your other teams in your division being good. Like, yeah, win your division, but I mean, it's like Minnesota had 13 wins last year, Green Bay had 11 wins. So I like that one, actually. Interested to see if you guys agree with that one. I feel like it's pretty hit or miss, but I like it, actually. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We'll be back tomorrow for another edition of the show. Until then, thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.